Welcome to the micro-module series Understanding Bias in Epidemiological Studies. In this module, we will be focusing on information bias caused by inaccurate recall, also known as recall bias. The objectives of this module are to explain how bias may arise from the recall of participants, illustrate it with an empirical case control study, and introduce how to address the bias. In epidemiological studies, especially retrospective studies, for example, case control studies, it is often inevitable to require the participants to provide some information or data based on their recall. For example, participants might be asked on average, how many beers did you drink per week last year? Relying on participants' memory may introduce recall bias, a type of information bias that occurs when participants do not accurately remember a past event or experience or leave out details when reporting about them. Recall bias is more likely to occur when the event happened a long time ago or when the study participant has a poor memory. Recall bias can result in either overestimating or underestimating the association between the exposure and the outcome. Compared to the controls, cases diagnosed with the disease of interest may search their memories more thoroughly, but tend to provoke false memories, leading to an overestimation of the association. For example, lung cancer patients scrutinize more intensely their past exposure to secondhand smoke, potentially overestimating their exposure. On the other hand, some diseases, for example, dementia, can cause memory impairment, making cases not able to recall their exposures accurately, thus underestimating the association. Asking a proxy, for example, family members of dementia patients, for information on the patient's past exposure has the same problem. Now let's look at an example. This is a case control study that investigated whether the use of oral contraceptives after conception increases the risk of giving birth to malformed infants. In this study, the cases were women who gave birth to malformed infants, and the controls were women who gave birth to non-malformed infants. Their exposure to oral contraceptives after conception was assessed using two data sources: self-reported information and obstetric records. Interestingly, the results of the two analyses were quite different. When relying on self-reported data, a strong association between the use of oral contraceptives after conception and giving birth to malformed infants was found, with an odds ratio of 9. However, when the analysis was conducted based on data from obstetric records, the association appeared much weaker, with an odds ratio of 1.49. This is because the analysis based on self-reported data is subject to recall bias, overestimating the association. Specifically, mothers of malformed infants are more likely to search their memory for any use of oral contraceptives after conception. As a result, they may overreport the exposure. For example, 15 mothers self-reported using oral contraceptives after conception, but only 11 were confirmed to have actually used them based on obstetric records. In contrast, mothers of non-malformed infants may not be able or motivated to recall such details. In this study, only 3 of them reported using oral contraceptives, while obstetric records show that 12 actually did. This example shows how recall bias can distort the results and overestimate the association. So how can we minimize recall bias? Here are 2 key strategies. One solution is to use disease or hospital controls, that is, individuals with other diseases than the one of interest in your study. If the cases tend to recall more of the exposure due to intense search for the cause of their disease, using disease controls helps balance recall errors between the cases and the controls, as the controls are also motivated to seek explanations for their diseases. Another solution is to use historical or objective records rather than ask subjects to recall, such as the electronic health records, or at least use historical objective records as supplementary data sources where possible. Okay, in this module we discussed how inaccurate recall can result in information bias and explore the strategies to address it. In the next module, we will look at another form of information bias, interviewer bias. Thank you for listening.